Amigos y amigas de Breaking News, mira, entonces estamos en un episodio más, un capítulo más. Este que te habla, con el que Ramos Lube, que estoy con Enrique Fernández, Puro Ferrer. Y Arturo. Estamos hoy.
Estamos en vivo. We're live. Monday live.
Estamos live hoy lunes en vivo y a todo color en Facebook y YouTube. Y el episodio de hoy la pusimos Having a Beer with Carol Stoudt. ¿Quién es Carol Stoudt? Es un ícono, un trailblazer, la madre de la cerveza artesanal, la reina de los hops, la fundadora y master brewer de Stouts Brewing Company en Pensilvania. La mujer que después de la prohibición fue de las primeras master brewers, y además de ser master brewer, fue dueña de su propia cervecería. ¿Quién más podemos hablar de ella? Pues vamos a empezar a hablar con ella ya mismito. Carol Stoudt, how you doing? Welcome to Breaking News Beer and Coffee. Thank you. For us, it's an honor to have you here with us. How you doing?
It's my honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we start to talk with you, we have a special message for you. Dale, señor director, córrelo.
Hola, Carol. Somos la comunidad de mujeres cerveceras.
Estamos en 11 países de Latinoamérica.
Y queríamos aprovechar que fuiste invitada a esta entrevista
con los chicos de Breaking News
para expresarte nuestro agradecimiento
por tu aportación al mundo cervecero
y por servir de inspiración
a todas estas chicas alrededor del mundo
que desean desarrollar su pasión por las cervezas.
Te invitamos a que sigas nuestras redes sociales de Comunidad de Mujeres Cerveceras
para que disfrutes de nuestras actividades
y todo lo que hemos logrado como comunidad.
También nos encantaría
que colaboremos en un futuro
para ayudar a que más chicas se sumen
y aprendan de este mundo.
Un saludo enorme desde Latinoamérica.
That's wonderful. Oh my goodness.
That was a message from a lovely group of ladies, Comunidad de Cerveceras.
Beautiful.
It's a great group of ladies who love beer. Some of them are brewers, some of them are bartenders, different aspects of the industry. They wanted to give you that message.
That's awesome.
We'll definitely pass the video along to you so you can rewatch it later also if you want.
Yeah.
So thank you so much to the ladies, and thank you, Carol, for being with us here tonight. It means a lot. We're expecting an awesome chat, a beer chat. So
sounds good.
I see you already have a beer in hand, right?
I have a beer in hand, yes.
Definitely. That's the most important part.
What are you drinking?
I'm having a Calling IPA right now.
Nice.
And you, Carol, what do you having right now?
I'm drinking a Grosset that's aged in gin barrels for a year.
Nice. Wow,
nice.
It's one of the last beers that was brewed on our experimental system.
Nice.
That's awesome.
It's lovely. And we're not in summer, we're in springtime, but it's really a good spring and summer type of drink. Very refreshing. And putting in the gin barrels, it has hints of the gin into the beer itself. So, yeah.
Cheers.
Sounds fantastic. It must be like super aromatic.
Yeah, aromatic.
Very aromatic, absolutely.
Awesome. So, Carol, you've been around for, you've got a ton of experience in this industry. You started your brewery in 1987.
Right.
How did you first get, interested in beer? How did you get into the beer world?
Well, before I met my husband, Ed, we were married in 1975. Beer was not in my program because my family were not drinkers. Maybe at the holidays, a little homemade wine, but not beer. And I met my husband, and it's his favorite beverage. And on our honeymoon, we traveled to Europe, especially the southern part of Germany. And I experienced, and of course, in Rome, do what the Romans do. So I would drink the beer, and I was amazed at how fresh it was, and the nice carbonation and the distinct flavors. And I thought, wow, I never thought beer was like this. So that's when I was first introduced to it.
Wow.
So, long time ago, yeah.
So did you experience the real flavor of the beer?
The real flavor, because again, not being a beer drinker, and then most of my friends, if they drank, like in college, would drink, the mass marketed beers, the national brands, and I tasted them, but they didn't have flavor. They were overcarbonated, and I thought, why am I drinking this? So I would literally take a glass, and if you were at a party, and go and pour it down the drain, or go to the bathroom and pour it in the bathroom, because I just didn't like the flavor of it. But I just loved, in Germany, just experiencing what I call real beer, like Reinheitsgebot, all malted barley, and the yeast, the water, and of course the hops makes a difference. And I never knew what beer styles were, what's a double bock, what's a Hefeweizen. And so, the world was just opened to me. Yeah.
It's a great spot to get inspired from. Very traditional stuff.
Absolutely, yes. And the beers, every little village has their own little brewery. And, it's, they're very different from one town to the other, but it was always good because it's always fresh. Yeah. And I think that's really important. And when I started the brewery, which was 12 years later, because I raised 5 children, I wanted to bring that back. And our area is, a lot of Germans have settled in this area of Pennsylvania. And I just thought they would be so excited to have fresh beer that was similar to what they had in their homeland.
So, Carol, how did you brew, and how did you learn to brew? What was your first setup? What did you first?
My first, I was never a home brewer. My husband tried, and he made a big mess in my kitchen. So that never interested me. So in 1983, my husband and I went on one of Charlie Papazian's pre-conference tours to the Pacific Northwest. And during that 7-day trip, we were on a bus with mostly men. There was two other females around, and all we did was visit small little breweries at the time, visited hop fields, talked about stainless steel and different. I had my first, believe it or not, porter. I never knew what a porter was. I never knew what a mead was. And on that trip was a man named Dr. Carol Stoudt. He was a retired Pabst Brewmaster. And I guess he was just kind of interested in what this new group of people wanting to get into making beer in small batches were doing. And I befriended him on that trip, and I felt he's someone that has a wealth of knowledge. And when I decided to start the brewery 3 years later, I called him and asked if he would be a consultant. So I hired him as my consultant, and my first batch of beer was actually at the Abita Brewing in Covington, New Orleans, because Carol Stoudt said that they had the same type of equipment that I was going to have in my brewery. Okay. So I flew down there with another person that was going to help me in the brewery, and we went down there and spent a couple weeks there making beer. And they were making lagers, and they were also making ales. But again, the main thing was just learning how to use the equipment. That was my first experience in making beer. And I thought, wow, there's a lot of waiting. And guess when you're waiting around, what do? You drink the beer.
The best part of brewing. The best part of brewing, yeah.
So that's a great opportunity to be able to use the system that you're potentially going to have in the future before you even get into it. and at a place like Abita, which is they're a massive brewing now, but
this was in Covington, and they had a 15-barrel brew system, which was the one that I first put in. So it was and it was in an old garage, and they basically rolled up the garage doors, and it was beautiful weather, and it was so much fun. And Jim Patton, unfortunately, he's now deceased, but he was actually a chemist. And he had a wealth of information just about the brewing process and, talking about the hops and the ingredients and the whole process, and water, which obviously, is a key ingredient. So I was very blessed to have a really good start. And the good thing about the beer community is it's like a fraternity. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to help each other because our goal is to make good beer. That's right. Not the best beer, but great beer. And if we all make great beer, then people will drink our beer. Mm-hmm. And if we don't, then they'll buy beer from other countries. And that's not what we want. Our philosophy is, you drink and buy local and regional, and everyone's happy, like the way it used to be before Prohibition.
When do you decide to open a Stouts Brewing Company?
Well, we thought about it in 1984, and of course my husband wanted to do the beer himself, but he already had a restaurant. Uh-huh. And in those days, if you had a restaurant with a liquor license, you were not allowed brew pubs. You couldn't even have a brew pub. Oh, wow. So it was impossible. So I said to I was a former school teacher, and I thought, do I want to go back to teaching, or do I want to help his business, the restaurant? Mm-hmm. And by meeting all those great people on that pre-conference tour in the Pacific Northwest, I felt I really want to do this, and I can do this, because during that time, there were a lot of people that, were, maybe accountants, or there were some scientists, and they just kind of wanted to stop what they were doing and just kind of do their passion and help create and build this beer like we have now in the United States, where Americans now make the best beer in the world, in my opinion.
Definitely. I agree. I
agree.
Yay, we have to drink that. Cheers.
Cheers to that. So, Carol, one of the things that we were going to ask is what the first beer you ever brewed at Stouts was, but I have to ask both. Like, what was the beer you brewed at Abita, and then what was the first one actually at your own brewery?
Well, the first beer we did at Abita was an amber lager, and the first beer because amber was the buzzword then. Everything had to be copper colored and darker to be craft. Well, since my husband was going to be my best customer with his beer garden and restaurant, I had to make his favorite beer, which was a Helles style, which is Stouts Golden Lager, which actually was the original beer, and when we ended the brewery was still the number one selling beer, the Helles beer, which the inspiration comes from the Augustiner Brauerei in Germany.
Yeah.
So at that point,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
That style appeals to so many people. It appeals to the older people who understand what a Helles is, and it even appeals to the younger clientele that's just getting into beer. And when you have like 24 IPAs on draft and you have a Helles, well, you may go to the Helles for a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
You're right.
Lagers are sort of making a comeback, I think, in the super nerdy craft world.
Lagers rule the world, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I really, when we first started brewing beer, my husband and I, when we had the opportunity, would go and visit all new startups. And if they were making a lager beer and it was great, went to the top of my list.
So now basically hazies are what amber was back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what?
Everybody needs to have a hazy.
And there's not there, you know, hazy's fine, but that's kind of old school because we as professional brewers work very hard to make clear.
Yeah,
I know.
You know, it's the craze. We actually made one. I never thought I would, but whatever. But
So Carol,
they're very easy to drink.
Yeah,
and I think that is also what is appealing for the hazies, because really you don't have that hop bitterness that you have with some of the IPAs.
Yeah, have some sweetness too. They have a
the sweetness,
very aromatic.
Yes.
It's very aromatic,
sweet, right? We all like sweet.
Definitely,
yes.
Yeah, I enjoy them. Carol, there's more than 300 breweries now in Pennsylvania, but you were basically the first craft brewery in Pennsylvania in 1987. So
right.
How was it? You know, what was it like to have? And Pennsylvania now has it's not just that there's 300 breweries. There's a lot of really good breweries in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely.
What was it like back then to be the first and the only one in the?
Well,
in the
it was very difficult to educate people. Most people were afraid. First of all, my name is Stout. They thought, oh, I don't like stouts. I don't like dark beer. I said, excuse me, I have a DT, not a DT. So I early on, I brewed the beer for 2 years, and then to promote myself, I realized I had to hire someone to help brew and help keg, and I had to get out on the street and talk about the beer and have people sample the beer because they didn't understand. No one understood at that time what freshness was, you know, what malt, what hops, what water, what styles were, because beer was only sold by what you saw on the TV and the advertisement.
Okay.
And so I'm a teacher, so it became natural to me. So I spent most of my time out giving seminars, doing a lot of beer tastings, and just trying to educate people about, you know, what I was doing and what some of my other colleagues in the other part of the United States were doing, since I was alone. It was a tough decision. It took me 10 years to get my first draft account in Lancaster, which is a city just 19 miles away. 10 years. Because my beer was more expensive than, let's say, a Bud Miller Coors Yingling.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the toys. I didn't have coasters. I had a tap marker, of course. I didn't have banners. I didn't have table tents. I didn't have any of that stuff. I thought if you made a good beer, that's all you need to do. So eventually I got some of those toys, but
must have been incredibly uphill battle.
It was difficult, but I persevered. And I think what really helped is the Golden Lager won a silver medal in 1988 at the Great American Beer Festival. And what that did was give me free press. Yeah. So I had a lady from Philadelphia, Judy Wicks, who owned the White Dog Cafe. She saw the article in the Inquirer and called me up and said, Carol, I'd like to have your beer. And I said, Philadelphia, where's that? No, I'm teasing. I said, I only sell my beer in my hometown, my home county, Berks County and Lancaster County. And she said, well, you don't understand. I want everything that's made in Pennsylvania. So long story short, I started driving the beer to Philadelphia for her. And then that opened the doors to other restaurants and bars who really appreciated quality products and things made in Pennsylvania. So thank goodness Philadelphia became my main area of distribution until my local area kind of got the swing of it.
Mm-hmm. Carol, when you first opened your brewery, how many bottles was the first equipment?
Well, first of all, for 2 years, I was draft only. Crazy, huh? I never wanted to get into bottling because I'm not mechanical, and if you have a bottling line, you have to be mechanical. So,
and how many barrels do you make?
How many barrels?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Maybe 600 barrels a year. I forget. Not many. It wasn't many at all. And my biggest customer was my husband. And it was great when in the spring and summer and for Oktoberfest, but after Oktoberfest, my production went like boom. So I had to get outside accounts, which thank goodness then I was able to get some really strong draft accounts in Philadelphia. McGillen's Old Ale House, they were my number one. In fact, to this day, they still have some stout kegs, which I'm very proud of.
Why do you decide to focus in German styles beer at the beginning?
Because if the name STOU Stout, we're from Rothenburg up to Tauber. We're German blood. My husband is all German, and guess what? We like German style lagers.
I also like it, so.
That's a great style. I mean, if you do lagers right, we were talking a little bit before the show about this. That's a great style to start with if you're gonna do it right, because then people
you have to do it right. And I had a good mentor, Dr. Carol Stoudt. He was German, and he was a retired Pabst Brewmaster for years. But he also he got his Brewmaster at the Dolomiten school in Germany, but he was all about quality, and I learned so much from him. And also another person I learned a lot was Greg Noonan, who started the Vermont Pub and Brewery. He wrote the book, the layman's book on brewing lager beer. It's a little green paperback, and it was very easy to read and understand. And he became a very close and personal friend also. I had Dr. Carl Stoudt, who was the brewmaster with the science, the chemistry, and then I had Greg Noonan, who brought the artistic approach to making beer. So I was very fortunate.
That was great that you actually got to, meet ththese people and learn from them directly. There's so many people that have learned through their books, but you actually had the opportunity to hang out with them and learn. We've heard the name Greg Noonan now in various episodes, so he's definitely been a very important part of it. I think Terry Ferendorf also mentioned his name a couple times, and Garrett Oliver talked a little bit about Noonan.
We have
a video. We have a video question.
Okay.
I think we're gonna roll that now.
Hello, Carol. I'm Mallett. I'm a craft beer enthusiast from Puerto Rico. In your opinion, what aspect of the craft beer industry have changed for the better, and what do you believe can be improved? Thank you.
Well, I think we have so many breweries now, and I think our task is to keep people interested in the traditional beer styles. It's okay to play with some of the non-traditional styles, but I think if you go too far afield, you may lose some people. So I think that's very important. And also, we have everyone attacking our industry. Like, look at all the seltzers and kombuchas, and there's nothing wrong with any of this, but I just think we have to just kind of, if people have a brewery and are making traditional styles, just push that and focus on that and just try to value the importance of keeping them, because I think trendy styles will come and go, but the original beer styles will be there forever and will constantly have new people coming into the fold and also keep the older people there. That is my biggest fear, because when I started, beer was, I mean, it's not wasteland if you like beer of no flavor or imports, but we have so much now, and we just don't want to lose it. And that's very scary. And competition is keen in the beer industry. I hope I answered your question. Does that make sense?
So, no, definitely. So, in your opinion, just like refocus on beer.
Focus,
Sure.
yes. Focus on what beer is. Don't get too far away that it's not even a beer anymore.
Yeah, the seltzers are.
Along those lines, what's your opinion on breweries that, good breweries? Because a lot of breweries have done this nowadays. They start updating their recipes to sort of fit the palate, the more modern palate. We've seen it with really old school and classic beers now, like Stone IPA, for example. They put out their like 2.0 version. What's your take on
I just think you should be true to your philosophy. I mean, look, my Hellas was still #1. Think about that. Enough said. Scarlet Lady, #2. Good ESB.
ESB. I love ESB. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the award.
That's my next one.
There
we go, Scarlet Lady. That's the first deal that I ever made.
We have a picture here. Since you mentioned all the medals you won, let me. This is like a
I don't know who she is.
Newspaper article. I don't know from what year this was, but basically
it was a while back. I think I won 3 or 4 medals that year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is you with a bunch of medals from the GABF.
I know.
How many medals overall did you end up getting?
I think about 28, 30 medals.
That's pretty impressive.
I only ever entered my lagers because I really wanted good constructive criticism, feedback back from the judges. And again, I'm known for a lager brewery, and so that's why I wanted to always showcase the lagers. Yeah. I'm very proud of the beers that I've made.
So most of the 28 or 20 something medals were from.
They're all lagers.
All lagers.
Wow.
And that's probably one of the categories with the most entries, I would assume.
Yes.
So it's even more impressive.
Yes. Oktoberfest, Hefeweizen. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's really impressive.
We have a question from the chat. Señor Director, okay. I don't know if you can see the question on your.
So we have Tomas, how hard was to get materials back then? Malt hops, adjuncts, etc.
Okay, well, let me tell you a funny story. My yeast came from Weinsteffen, and I actually brought it over. Dr. Carol Stoudt introduced me to the brewmaster at Weinsteffen. And my husband and I were there visiting some breweries in Germany. I stopped at the School of Weinsteffen and brought my first lager yeast home on the slant on a test tube in my suitcase. Wow. How about that?
Direct from the source.
Yeah, the malt came from, again, that wonderful trip that I had with Charlie Papazian in the Pacific Northwest. I met Roger Brees, and he had a malt company out in Chilton, Wisconsin, which we visited. And he started specializing for the craft brewers, making, like 50-pound bags of specialty malts for them. So that wasn't very difficult. And the same thing with hops. I think that whole pre-conference tour and that conference, the Brewers Association conference in Portland, Oregon, that's where I met a lot of people that I just let them know I was going to get into the business, and they were actually very eager because for them, we're little toys. They like to make specialty malts so that we can play with them, and even with different hops. The hop growers like to, play with different types of hops, and it was not a difficult situation. And then the most important ingredient is water. Well, Adamstown, where we have the base of the Susquehanna Aquifer, so we have excellent water for brewing lager beer.
Wow.
So there we have it. And now today, my goodness, in the recent years, I also sourced some malt from Pennsylvania and some hops from Pennsylvania. But when I first started, no one was doing malt or hops in Pennsylvania, because years ago we were a producer of hops, but unfortunately we had hops like really hot summer days and cool nights, and we have too much humidity. So for the hops that we were using really weren't conducive to growing in Pennsylvania. But of course now with the different hop varieties, they're trying it again. So everything comes in full circle.
That's pretty awesome that you had access to, direct from the source, the yeast, which is obviously incredibly important at that point. And Breed, one of the biggest brands of malt right now. I mean, most of the stuff we get here in Puerto Rico for homebrewers is our Breeze, like you were mentioning,
yes,
and they're terrific malts. So.
And Roger Breeze, I mean, he was trying to sell extracts to me, and he gave me some extracts. I said, Roger, I'm not going to do extracts. But I have to say, the extracts have improved so tremendously. One of my friends who is an avid home brewer gave me some beers to sample, and he told me later they were made with all extract. And I said, I never would have believed it, but yeah.
So, Carol, now that you're mentioning, you have an awesome palate for beer. You're known for having a great palate. You've been a judge at a ton of events.
Right.
You think that's something that's, built into people when you're born? Is it something you have to hone?
No, I think, first of all, I think if you learn to taste and the more you taste, the better your palate will develop your own palate.
So you think it's anybody can just start tasting beer and learn it?
I think most people can, and maybe they won't taste the same as you taste or I taste, but it's what they taste, and who's to say that my palate is better than your palate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody gets a.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're tasting for what you enjoy, now if you're tasting for judging, then obviously you're going to have to learn all the negative things that can be in a beer, obviously. But just to get the aroma and the flavors that are in the beer and the aftertaste, that just becomes from practice and practice and practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fun thing to try and do.
You've had the opportunity to judge beers at GABF and a lot of really important competitions and events. Are there any particularly interesting stories that you have from? You probably met a ton of legends in the industry.
I love to judge beer. I was actually the first female to be asked to judge beer, because at that time I was the only one, because I'm older than Terry Ferendorf. She was, I think, was a third or fourth. But probably one of my most favorite judging episodes was with Michael Jackson.
Wow.
Not the club. And
the beer hunter.
It was the last session on a Friday afternoon. Of course, everyone's ready to go out and go party and drink martinis after judging. But we were drinking Imperial Stouts.
Wow.
And Michael just loves every beer. And I was judging with Judge George Reich, who was an Anheuser-Busch brewer, the great person. You should have him on your talk show sometime. He's retired from Anheuser-Busch. He is anyway, he was on the panel as well. So we were picking up too much diacetyl in the stout that really wasn't acceptable. But Michael just kept saying, but now let's just go back to this beer, because he could find something wonderful out of every beer.
Wow.
And it was just so, And obviously, because I had such a great panel talking about the beer, it didn't matter that we were there just debating and pulling for the beer that we thought was the best beer. But he truly loved, he could find a quality in any beer, which I think is very remarkable, very amazing. So that was, I think, I have a lot of good experiences, but that one just always comes in my mind right away.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Jackson is obviously, if we were mentioning, not the singer, but he's another legend in the industry. So that's.
He and Charlie Papazian visited my brewery maybe 2 years after we were open, and I made for Oktoberfest a Rauch beer. Big mistake. I like Rauch beers, but of course the market, my clientele were not into the Rauch beer. Michael loved this Rauch beer, and he wrote about it in his books. So then people would call and say, Carol, can we buy your Rauch beer? Sorry. Maybe I'll brew it 10 years from now, but it was a great beer, but it did not sell. But Michael wrote about it.
Did you brew it again? Did you brew it?
We never got to brew it. No, it's a hard beer style to sell.
It's a smoky and
You know, did you ever have Lou Bryson on your show?
No,
Lou Bryson,
no, we haven't.
Well, they did a tribute for me a couple months ago, and of course I did some beer tasting with Lou Bryson. He's a beer writer for whiskey, but he also wrote many books on Pennsylvania breweries.
Nice.
And he loves Rauch beer. And he said, Carol, why didn't you just, because he knows I can be very stubborn and do what I want to do. And I said, well, maybe Lou, if I would be a little bit younger, then I would just kind of say that whatever with everything and just brew the styles I love to brew, whether they sell or not.
I have a proposal to you, Carol. If we can, maybe we can learn the recipe. We can make it homebrew, and we can make it. We can make it so in your honor.
Yes,
that would be awesome. OG Rauch beer, Carol Stoudt Rauch beer.
And Arturo will make the how you say the label, so we can do it.
Okay.
Big Brew Day is just around the corner.
So you've done it? You've done the Rauch beer?
Arturo.
I have done some. I have done many of those. Yeah.
Yeah, but they really.
I love smoked beers.
Yeah, I mean they're great for. I think they're great for Oktoberfest, for barbecue. You know, you definitely have to eat some food with the Rauch beers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the last one I made was Grosicki. It's a Czech. It's a Polish. I think so.
Polish style. I think,
yeah, a Polish smoked with beer.
Grosicki.
Awesome.
Grosicki, yeah.
Yeah, I've never tried a Rauch beer. I've tried them. I've never brewed one, but the only smoked beer I think I've ever brewed was Lichtenheiner, which is like a sour, the smoked sour beer. Which
oh wow, that sounds exciting.
I'm not a huge fan of smoked beers, but I really like when they're like the smoked sour. I think it really helps balance out the smoke in the beer. So that's interesting.
I have never had a smoked sour beer. So you have one on me there.
Nice.
We have another show with you.
Definitely.
We will do it.
We have to brew one and send Carol a couple of bottles.
Yes. We will do it.
I think it's in the historical BJCP, right? In the styles.
I'm pretty old, so I guess.
Random.
Oh. we have a question from our chat. Señor director, légasela, Kike, por favor.
So Herb Bowers is asking, Scarlet Lady was my favorite Stouts beer. What is the history behind that beer?
Okay, good history. Well, a lot of my Philadelphia friends, my taverns said, Carol, why don't you make an ale. And I said, well, we have Sierra Nevada making a pale ale, and we don't need another pale ale. And they said, well, we only can get Bass Ale. Why don't you make an ESB? So I decided, okay, I'll make an ESB. I called it Stouts ESB. It sold okay, but not real great. So then, Chris Mullins from McGillen said, well, Carol, look at your hair. I think it could be Scarlet Lady. So we basically, same recipe and just changed Stouts ESB to Scarlet Lady, and guess what? Boom! And this beer, it's we use English malt, Maris Otter malt, and we use Fogel's Kent Goldings, but it's easy drinking, and people loved it because it's amber colored, but you can drink several pints of this. It's not a once and done, and there aren't a lot of craft breweries making this style, but you have to play down the ESB because people think, oh, I don't like bitter, but it's not a bitter.
It's not bitter. No, it's not bitter.
It's all about the malt shining in this beer.
Yeah, I think the Englishmen, the Englishmen love to drink, and they make almost all their beers are like low ABV, but with so much flavor.
Yes.
This is like drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking.
Yes.
Yeah, and ESB is one example of that.
Yes, it is.
The name for that one is a bit misleading, but just super drinkable beer.
Super drinkable, yeah. And this was a good, very, very popular style and one of my favorites. And that's the thing. I didn't brew a beer that I didn't like to drink. Nice. So it's kind of cool. Yeah. And I think as a brewer, that's important too. You have to believe in what you can do, and you have to believe in your beers and have passion around it, and then people will understand that and it'll work for you.
Yep.
How did you get the nickname Queen of Hops? I love that name. I love that name. Yeah. And I think you guys had a line of beers, right?
I overuse hops because my hops are very balanced, and I think it probably came from when I was at the McGillen's Ale House in Philadelphia, 150th anniversary. I made a special 1860 beer for them, and I dressed in a green satin dress with hops around my waist, hops around my head. And there was a reporter there, and he did a story on McGillen's and also me making the beer for them, and that's how it came.
Nice.
You were literally dressed as the Queen of Hops.
The queen with a wreath of hops.
We need to see that photo.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Probably around somewhere, definitely.
You know that the whole world is coming down with this problem, with this pandemic.
Yes.
How was let me see, affected? How your brewery was affected by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, I retired before the pandemic. I retired in January.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, we brewed all our beers last December and this past January. So all the beers that are made were just kind of sold.
Oh.
Yeah. So I can't really speak to what extent maybe some other breweries can, but my beers were still selling because my accounts still wanted the beer as long as we had it. Yeah, I can't speak to that, but I'm sure a lot of people lost. I'm very good friends with Tom Kehoe from Yards, and obviously a lot of their volume is in draft accounts. So of course their draft volume went down significantly. So they had to pour more of their volume into selling to the supermarkets, which now we can sell beer in supermarkets in Pennsylvania.
Okay. So all the beer that you guys had in tanks, etc., you were able to move it after you guys.
Yeah.
Awesome. And now that you've retired,
a little bit in barrels.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm my children were after me. I'm 71 years old. I'll be 72 in July. They've been bugging me to retire since I was 65. And I said, I love what I do. I can't stop. And I really couldn't find anyone yet to really take over my brand. And I'm hoping in the future someone will take over my brand and the recipes. But my kids, and I have 5 of them, and they're pretty strong children. I raised pretty awesome kids. They just wanted me to, and my husband's 81 years old, and they just wanted me to kind of stop and relax and enjoy my grandchildren without the pressure of working, even though I loved it. I like working. And I love beer. I love the beer people. I think beer has kept me younger because I met so many wonderful people over the course of my brewing career. It's amazing. Yeah.
So the door is still open for more Stouts beer in the future.
The door is still open.
One of the questions we were going to ask is
Puerto Rico Stouts Brewery. How about that?
Sounds good.
Be awesome. It's a growing market here, so there's definitely room for it. But one of the questions we were going to ask is if you considered selling the brand before retiring, but I guess there's still a open possibility for somebody taking over the.
Yes, yeah, we sold.
I imagine you didn't want just anybody to take over the.
No, they have to have the passion that I have, and they have to make beer of good quality.
That's right. That's the problem.
Or I'll come back and want them. And you will help me, right?
We can move to Philly if you want to Pennsylvania.
Most definitely. So now that you're retired, Carol, do you still are you still getting involved in beer events, judging?
I tried to stop, but I love talking about beer, and I wouldn't miss it if I wouldn't be involved. Mm-hmm. And what my plan is really visiting some of the breweries that I love and I haven't visited. I'll start with New England and start with Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and just visit some of the breweries I haven't visited and go from there.
And Puerto Rico.
And
yeah.
It would be awesome if you could just start visiting, landmark breweries and collaborating with them or doing like special.
That's what I'm kind of thinking of. Yeah.
Like a Stouts collaboration, contract brew type of thing with a bunch of really cool breweries.
Yes.
Yeah. I did a collaboration with Sierra Nevada, and Lawson's was there, and Dogfish, and Trillium from Boston. Yep. And anyway, that was a lot of fun. And then I did a collaboration just a few months before I closed with Sly Fox. They also make lager beers, and we made a black lager together, and that was really nice. Yeah. I would love to do a collaboration with Bell's Brewery because I love their beers.
We get Bell's here in Puerto Rico, so if that ever happens, it'd be fantastic if we could get at least a couple cases to the island. Everybody would love that.
I know.
And I agree. Bell's is amazing.
For years and years. I mean, he's pretty retired now, but he has good people running running his fort. So John Mallett, I think, is the brewmaster who I've known for many years. He worked at a brewery in Virginia, Old Dominion. Yeah, he has a lot of good people around him, but their beers are phenomenal. I remember one year he did 10 different stouts.
Wow.
I know. I said, Larry, you're crazy. He said, what the hell? He said, I can do that. And he does, and he did. Yeah, he's a good guy.
It was was one of those styles that come back with a punch. And with the new, it's not new, but it's like putting in whiskey bowers, putting in wine bowers, and every adjunct and every fruit that it's making a comeback too.
Yeah, you can do a lot of stuff with
a lot of things.
We have a comment here from Suzanne. When are you going to make more Stouts Gold Lager and send it to the OG craft beer cellar in Boston?
I know. They're such good people. Yeah.
Is that a store, a craft beer store in Boston?
Yes, it's one of the best craft beer stores in Boston. Yeah, and I have to tell a sad story about that. I wanted to sell all of my beer in Pennsylvania, and there were a lot of accounts in the Boston area that were wanting the beer, especially Golden Lager and Fat Dog. And to be honest with you, I had the accounts. I didn't have the love of my wholesaler. So unfortunately, he did not keep my beer in stock. So therefore, and did not take care of the beer properly. So I pulled out. But it wasn't because they didn't love the beer. But I also had a different thought. I mean, like, if there are good breweries in your state, you don't need to get beer from anywhere else. I think you need to support and love your local beers.
Mm-hmm.
And, there were a lot of really good beers in the Boston area. I mean, really good beers. So I didn't feel too bad about it.
One of the things we were going to touch is what you thought governments and regulations should do to help out craft breweries and maintain them alive.
Well, first of all, if you have a wholesaler that doesn't love your beer, that doesn't respect your issues as far as quality, rotation of product, working together collectively to grow your business, then you should be able to shake hands and move on.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it is now, you have to spend lots of money with attorneys if you can get out, but they hold you hostage. That is the worst. That was probably one of my most disheartening parts of the brewery, just having a wholesaler that, they love you at first because they want your beer because they don't want their competitor to get you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then with all the influx of other breweries coming around, you become less important. And, the big guys who pay the big bucks, like the Bud Miller Coors, Heineken, Corona, they have all the money to spend and the attention goes there. So you get you and your sales staff, meaning my sales staff, are selling our beer,
mm-hmm.
and they're making and they're not helping to grow the product. So guess what? Then they should. Okay, you're not doing a good job. You did a good job for a couple of years. Let's just amiably have a nice divorce. But no, they hold you hostage. That's the worst thing. So. But it takes money. And a lot of small breweries don't have that to change. But our local Pennsylvania Brewers Association is working hard. And I actually gave a lot of strong talks to try to change the franchise laws in Pennsylvania. But Pennsylvania isn't the only one. Many states are like that. It's
so you're a big believer in breweries being able to self-distribute and just
absolutely positive. Yes.
Yeah, Carol, that reminds me of in the music industry. It was the same. It was the same thing. You have the big bands and the big people, and the small bands that is growing up. They didn't get any attention, and they don't sell the product, but the big guys do.
I know.
But today, with the help of the internet, it's another thing. Small brands and small bands is getting the attention of the people because they can do it directly to the consumer.
Carol, what will be your recommendation to somebody who wants to open a brewery?
Don't do it right now. We have too many. No, seriously. I think, first of all, do your homework. Try to visit as many small brew pubs, different middle size, large production breweries. Get as much experience as you can behind your belt. Take some brewing courses if you want to actually make the beer, because you really should, even if you're an owner, you should know the process. And then if you can apprentice in a brew pub or a brewery, whether it's kegging, work your way up and see if it works for you. See if you really have the passion. But I think you have to do your due diligence, especially in this climate, because we have a lot of breweries now in the United States. So if you want to open one, just make sure you're doing it the right way, because you only get one shot, in my opinion.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? And the beer should be good.
Definitely. It's over.
I make good lagers.
Breweries right now, I think, in the States. It's crazy.
It's very crazy. Yeah.
So
don't copy your neighbor. Be your own identity. Figure out what you want.
Yeah, brew the beers that you want to drink.
Exactly. Yeah. And don't be a trendsetter, because trends, don't. I don't know.
Come and go. So.
They come and go.
No, don't make hard seltzer.
No.
Mal carajo. Hey,
no flour in my beer, and no glitter in my beer.
No, don't glitter. Yeah.
That's right.
Nowadays,
Helles have been for so long. And it's still one of the best styles of beer.
Yesterday, I have a Helles, and I was like, whoa, it's a beauty.
They're beautiful beers.
The simplicity is beautiful.
But it just drinks so well.
I was like, whoa. Bello.
I like the way you do that.
Yeah. But nowadays there's a lot of that. We're getting questions in beer groups and stuff like that. Like, how much glitter do I put per barrel?
No, no glitter.
Wait. So somebody turned in the wrong direction at some point. Well, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad, so I can't. I can't complain. So, Carol, what are your future plans? Do you have anything that you have planned for the near future?
Well, I'm actually going to Vermont. I'm going to my husband and I are moving to a small horse farm in Vermont. And
Wow.
I spend a lot of time taking care of the fruit. There's a lot of fruit trees on the farm, and gardening, and taking care of the horses, I can ride horses. I may learn to drive horses in a cart, and spend some time with a lot of the Vermont breweries that I really like. I really like Sean Lawson's beers a lot.
Very good.
He's a fabulous brewer, and that's what I'm going to do for now. And I have 3 grandchildren there, and then
with the family.
I'm going up to Maine because I was a very good friend of Dave Geary's Ales, and he's retired, but he still has a small production going, and also Rob Todd, who has Allagash. He's a dear friend of mine, so I want to spend time with him and see he has now 28 yeasts going. And
Wow.
I have so much respect for him. And there's just a lot of people I want to visit in New England. Jim Cook's a very good friend. He's opening up a little brew pub in the Back Bay. and Megan Parisi is his brewer there, and I know her very well. So there's there's a lot.
That sounds like an amazing plan, amazing time.
He's sitting on my rocking chair.
A lot of really good beer in that area. Hill Farmstead is also one of my favorite breweries.
Really good.
Yes,
Really
I like their beers a lot. Sean, I think his name, right?
Sean Hill.
Yeah, Sean Hill.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a Vermont in my my bucket list. I have it.
Yeah.
And the Alchemist, you can't leave them out of there.
I love Four Seasons, and I really love snow. I love to ski. So, yeah, we're going to we're not going to Florida where it's warm.
But you have to go to Puerto Rico and visit us.
Not now. Maybe next year. I'm teasing.
Yeah.
So, before we go, we have some announcement. I'm going to change in Spanish, so sorry about that.
Should I close my ears?
No.
Definitely not.
El próximo episodio, el próximo capítulo, el próximo live va a ser el próximo 20 de abril, martes 20 de abril a las 8 de la noche. También vamos a tener un Meet 101 con Jeff Murray, que es el dueño y meat maker de Wildfire Meat Company en Texas. Él nos va a estar enseñando cuál es el proceso detrás de hacer meat, porque realmente yo no sé nada de hacer meat. Pues ese día vamos a aprender a hacer, pero eso es que es un Meet 101, porque vamos a aprender desde cero, desde lo más básico, hasta vamos a ir subiendo, y cualquier pregunta que tengan para este día.
En español, hidromiel.
Hidromiel, aguamiel. Ese día, pues apúntense para que lo vean a las 8 de la noche, martes, en vez de ser lunes, pues va a ser martes a las 8 de la noche. Y también queremos anunciar también para los amigos homebrewers de Puerto Rico, el The Beer Clone Wars, que la fecha de entrega va a ser hasta el 24 de mayo del 2021, que la cerveza que deben clonar va a ser la Tank 7, y esto es presentado por Breaking News Beer and Coffee, Caribbean Brewing, La Esquinita, Jardín Cervecero, Homebrewers de Puerto Rico, Boulevard Brewing Company, Craft Beer de Puerto Rico. O sea que ese día apúntense a los homebrewers. Esto solamente, entiendo que solamente es una competencia solamente para miembros activos del Club de Homebrewers de Puerto Rico. Ya lo saben, apúntense esas dos fechas, ya las saben. Los esperamos el próximo martes a las 8 de la noche. Y ¿qué más podemos decir? Antes de irnos otra vez, señor director, si puedes una vez más poner el video del principio, porque Carol se lo merece. Tenemos un Trailblazer. We have to play it again.
Run the video again, the one we played at the start.
Por favor, señor director, yo sé que te cogí fuera de base,
Hola,
pero...
Carol. Somos la comunidad de mujeres cerveceras.
Estamos en 11 países de Latinoamérica.
Y queríamos aprovechar que fuiste invitada a esta entrevista
con los chicos de Breaking News
para expresarte nuestro agradecimiento
por tu aportación al mundo cervecero
y por servir de inspiración
a todas estas chicas alrededor del mundo
que desean desarrollar su pasión por las cervezas.
Te invitamos a que sigas nuestras redes sociales de Comunidad de Mujeres Cerveceras
para que disfrutes de nuestras actividades
y todo lo que hemos logrado como comunidad.
También nos encantaría
que colaboremos en un futuro
para ayudar a que más chicas se sumen
y aprendan de este mundo.
Un saludo enorme desde Latinoamérica.
Yeah. Gracias a todas las chicas de la comunidad de mujeres cerveceras, muy agradecidos por su participación. En verdad que estamos muy entusiasmados con todo lo que están logrando y con todo lo que está haciendo. Eso es lo que nos hace falta.
Definitely look their group up, Carol, on social media, Comunidad de Mujeres Cerveceras. I'm sure they'd love to collaborate with you at some point. You guys can probably do some cool stuff. And like they said, we can't thank you enough for everything you've done. You're an inspiration to everybody. Amazing, what an amazing career, amazing beers. I was lucky enough to try a couple of your beers.
Me too.
So we really can't thank you enough for taking the time to be here with us tonight. So
You
Thank
change
you.
our
It was
you
fun,
change
yeah.
you change our community. You change it.
Yeah.
You're a trailblazer. You're an icon.
I'm a trailblazer.
Ciao.
So
Thank you
thank
very
you so much for your time. Don't leave at the end of the show. We want to take like a screenshot with you. So
Okay.
we're gonna run the outro now, and
No, pero
we'll
todavía
do that.
las redes. Carol, if
Yes.
somebody wants more information about you on your Instagram, Facebook, you can say that your how you said your ¿cómo se llama eso? Las social media.
Where people can get the yeah.
It's Carol@stoutsbeer.com.
Ah, it's easy.
Easy. Yeah.
Easy. So, Arturo, ¿dónde te pueden conseguir? Cuéntame.
Facebook me pueden conseguir como Arturo Ferrer y en Instagram como Minimalist.
Míralo allá abajo, mira, tienes que hacer así, mira. Producción, estamos mejorando. Quique, cuéntame, ¿dónde te pueden conseguir? Háblame.
Déjame ver qué sale en el screen porque no sé. Enrique Fernández, Facebook, Instagram, Henry Des, y obviamente en la esquinita Jardín Cervecero. Los esperamos allí todas las semanas, con gusto. Nos encanta atenderlos. Todo lo que necesiten de cerveza lo tenemos allí, así que los veremos por allí.
Thank you.
Ahora voy yo. Mira, tíramelo, señor director, para que no se me olvide. Tírame lo que es, porque si ahora no tengo excusa que se me olvide. Mira, nos siguen en Facebook, bajo Jorge Ramos Lugo, en Instagram, bajo Ramones Brew. Y vamos para atrás, señor director. Y a todos nos consiguen en Breaking News, Vegan Coffee. Será hasta la próxima. Salud y pesetas.
Salud.
Salud, Carol. Thank you.
Cheers, Carol. Thank you so much.
Gracias.
Gracias. Thank you. Llévatelo.